Let's get started, and I'm sure more people will trickle in as we move forward. Just starting off, I wanted to let you guys know how wonderful you are. I want everyone to know that when I give presentations, because when you, as an educator, the work that you do is so important. I planned to go into education, then I ended up not going that way with my career, but I just so value what you do, and my career has paralleled education, so I worked with teachers and districts my whole career, and I just want you to know that you're amazing people. So I was thrilled when I was asked to come and give this presentation, because you guys do so much and you break your backs trying to do it, and so if I can help you to make your life a little bit easier, then that just makes my day. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share this with you a second time. We had a bigger group in the morning, but this will be exciting even if we have just a more intimate group today. So getting started off, first, I like to start with a disclaimer. I cannot fix all of your burnout problems right now, okay? I don't know why you're here. If you're feeling burnt out, if you felt burnt out, hi friends, I'm so glad you found us. Hi. I don't know if you felt burnt out this last school year. I don't know if you're feeling burnt out right now and you're feeling some kind of dread about going back into the next school year. I don't know if you've burnt out in the past and you really don't want it to happen again, and that's why you're here. Whatever the case, when I only have an hour with you, it's less than an hour, that drives me nuts. I'm going to talk fast because I love teaching, and there's so much information that I want to get into your brains in the short period of time that I have with you. But I can't dig into skills with you. I'm going to talk about the skills. I'm going to point them out, and we're just going to skim them. And it turns into that's your homework. If you realize I'm not good at this skill, then that's when we ask the Oracle of Google for book recommendations. If you want to dig deeper into, okay, that's a skill I need to work on so I can help prevent my own burnout. What I can do with you in an hour is I can help you with a mindset shift. That's the thing that I can really dig deep and help you to start thinking differently so that you approach chronic stress differently, which opens up worlds. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Like I said, I mentioned the skills, but we just don't have time to dig into them. So we're going to start out with just the basics of burnout, so we're all on the same page. We're going to talk about the protective skills. We're going to start with the solutions first. So then when we start talking about the problems and the causes of burnout, the risk factors that lead to burnout, we're actually going to be practicing applying the skills that we talked about in the second section. Also, I use pictures of Legos because burnout's kind of heavy. I feel like when we talk about burnout, people a lot of times, they just have this stressed, like just overwhelmed look on their face because we're thinking about what sucks in our jobs sometimes and what doesn't feel good. And so it just keeps things light. So we're just going to enjoy chuckling at the Lego pictures together because they make me chuckle. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I used to work in the nonprofit sector. I had a job that I really enjoyed. I've always worked with youth. That job I ended up disengaging from for a variety of factors. I got a new job thinking that I was going to change the world and everything was going to be better, and I ended up burning out severely from it, where I had to quit. I tried working part-time at a different organization and I couldn't. Burnout can take on the form basically of a form of PTSD, and I was at a point where I was like, I cannot have a boss. Like my brain was, you cannot have a boss. So for 5 years I couldn't hold a regular job, and it was partially also because of these health conditions I developed. I had chronic fatigue where I would sleep a whole night, and then during the day I'd also be sleeping another 6 hours on top of that. And I had debilitating anxiety where going to the grocery store would reduce me to tears. I developed digestive issues where I couldn't eat dairy and gluten. And so at the same time, like burnout usually doesn't last 5 years. I'm an overachiever. So when I do things, I do it extra. So I just like burned out spectacularly when I did it. And I also happened to be in an emotionally abusive marriage at the time. And so when I left my job, the chronic stress never actually stopped. So I didn't recover from that until I started going to a boundaries coach and working with her specifically for my marriage problems. But amazingly enough, then my burnout symptoms started disappearing. And I was able then to return to the workforce. I entered the public health sector in the prevention field. And that's what I do today is my day job. I do part-time, and then part-time I do executive coaching for burnout prevention. Because burnout, prevention principles apply across anything. And burnout right now isn't covered by a specific industry, because it's not a medical diagnosis and it's not a mental health diagnosis, so it's kind of fallen in between the cracks. And I said, well, I'll just work on tackling it then for my little corner of the world, because I don't want other people to go through what I've gone through. And what I know in the prevention world absolutely applies to burnout, and I want to help people, like I said, just to not experience what I went through. So that's me. Let's talk about burnout. So who here's ever been in a rocky relationship? Yeah, everybody? You guys are only... Okay, 3 people get extra credit because they're actually raising their hands. Thank you. Hello, welcome. So for those of you that are Marvel fans, you know, these guys are friends, and then in Captain America Civil War, they're duking it out, and it's bad. So we've all been in rocky relationships, and I teach people when it comes to burnout, you need to think of yourself as being in a relationship with your job, okay? There's you and your job, and those are the 2 entities. And when you're in a rocky relationship, when there's problems, we all know that it's pretty rare that only one of those parties is to blame, okay? So if you are feeling burnt out, it is not just you with the problem. And it's also rarely just the environment, the workplace, that is the problem. Burnout happens at the intersection of the individual and their workplace, their work environment. And so it's kind of like a chemical reaction, because just like in relationships, it's every person is going to be different for them, because you can have 2 people in the exact same job, and one is burning out and the other is not, because it's a high human contact type position, and one's an introvert and one's an extrovert. So for one, it's more draining, and for one, it's not. One, it's more stressful, and one, it's not. So burnout isn't a one size fits all, or a, this is absolutely going to cause burnout, because it just depends on the person, and it depends on the workplace, and then how those things come together. And so you can see me as kind of like, I'm a relationship coach. I champion the relationship and maintaining the relationship and helping to reconcile and resolve differences. That's my goal, is for people to stay in their jobs that they've chosen, that they obviously loved at some point. They went into this career for some reason, versus having to quit. Where that's kind of like, oh, if somebody decides to break up or get a divorce, and then that is sometimes the solution when differences can't be resolved, but ultimately what we're aiming for is to prevent that from happening. That's full burnout. So in addition to this, I want you to know that it's not your fault if you're feeling burnt out. I also want you to know, if you're feeling burnt out, there's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. Because a lot of people, when they're burning out, they think that they feel dysfunctional. They think there's something wrong with them. You are having a normal human reaction to a life experience. That's what burnout is. So even though you feel like you're not functioning well, you should be able to do this and should be able to do that, stop shoulding on yourself, because that literally only makes it worse. It adds more stress, this internal pressure that exacerbates what you're already feeling. So please know, it's not your fault if you're burnt out, and there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, so those are some super foundational stuff. Now we're going to talk about the boring stuff that's like the definition, textbook stuff. So I already mentioned burnout is not a medical condition. It's not a mental health diagnosis. The World Health Organization classifies it as a workplace phenomenon. They kind of define it as it's a thing that increases the likelihood of people having health problems. So it's not a health condition itself. And so it comes from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. That's what burnout is. The reality is that the term is thrown around a lot. People use the term burnout and they say I'm burnt out when they're not actually burnt out. So burnout happens kind of on a spectrum. And these are the characteristics of burnout, that if you don't have all 3 of these things, you're technically not burnt out. However, if you are saying I'm burnt out, or you hear someone say they're burnt out, what they're communicating is I'm feeling chronically stressed. They might be communicating, I'm feeling disengaged, I'm feeling exhausted. So they might be communicating that they're feeling some of these things, even if they don't have all 3 of them. But whatever the case, full burnout oftentimes results in I have to quit my job because there's just no way for me to get over the stress until I've separated myself enough from the job situation. So just to go over this really quickly, those 3 characteristics are energy depletion, mental distance from your job. So that could be negativity, cynicism, or depersonalization. That's like basically when you're getting to the point of like, what's the point? Like it's the disengagement, or it's the, I don't really care what happens with my students anymore. I'm not invested in, I just can't put forth the extra energy to try to help them if they're struggling. Like I just don't care. And then reduced professional efficacy is basically when you start getting to that point of feeling like you suck at your job. Like you have a pessimistic evaluation of how you're doing. You think I'm not doing the good that I want to be doing, and I'm not that great at what I do, and it's that it translates, the layman terms are loss of energy, loss of enthusiasm or disengagement, and loss of confidence. So I'm not going to explain this chart specifically, but just know this is to show that there is a spectrum when it comes to burnout. On the left is when someone's fully engaged in their job, when all the bars are above the line. On the right is when you're fully burnt out, when all the bars are below the line. And then there's these different burnout profiles that are dependent on how strongly you're feeling those three different items that I just showed you. So just know, if you use the term burnout, there is an official definition for it, but that term means I am chronically stressed. So let's do something about it. So we're going to talk about these protective skills. These are the protective skills that you guys are thinking of, right? Who, when they read this, like the description, they're like, oh, burnout. Who was like, oh, they're going to talk about like deep breathing and self-care? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay, thank you. Because that's what we're used to, right? Like I have a friend, she told me, she was like, during the pandemic, I was like, if one more person tells me to take a deep breath, like I'm going to punch something. And so we're not going to talk about those things. Deep breathing is good. I have one slide on self-care. We're going to talk about it at the end. I teach self-care differently than how you've learned it in the past. But just note that this is not what we're talking about. Netflix and bubble baths is not the answer to preventing burnout. So starting with this mindset, the foundation of this mindset is empowering yourself. So I don't believe in empowering people. I believe in teaching people to empower themselves, because I can't give you power. You already have it. And sometimes we give it away. Sometimes we fall into this victim mindset, and that's what we want to really get out of today. So when it comes to fault versus responsibility, it does not matter whose fault it is that the stressors that you have in your job are happening, okay? It does not matter if it's the administration's fault that they keep moving you around and changing your classroom and adding more stress and changes, and you just feel like your life's out of control. It is not, it doesn't matter if it's their fault. It doesn't matter if it's the parents' fault or the kid's fault or your colleague's fault that there is stress. It doesn't matter if it's the system's fault. You don't have resources. Because if we get too focused on the fault, it might be their fault. But if we're too focused on the fault, then we're really caught up in the justice of things, and we cannot control that. If we focus on taking responsibility for what we have responsibility over, which is ourselves, then we are focused on the solution rather than getting really caught up in the justice, which is just going to make you feel like you're spinning your wheels, okay? So I want you to empower yourself to focus on the solution by taking responsibility for yourself, because you are your human, okay? There's 8 billion humans on the planet, and you are the only person who is 100% responsible for you. There is nobody else who is going to take 100% responsibility for you. And if you don't take care of you, then no one is going to step in and fill in the gap. And in helping professions, we suck at this because we love to help everybody else because that makes us feel good. And we need to learn these skills. This is part of why I burnt out. So I know it and I see it. And there's actual research behind it in the helping professions, how we struggle with this. And so knowing that you need to take care of yourself first, it's the put your own mask on first. We're going to dig deeper into what that looks like. Because when you are taking responsibility for yourself in the situation, I want you to know that's not admitting that you're guilty. Again, it's not your fault if you're burning out or if something is stressing you out. It's not a fault thing. You're taking responsibility. You're not admitting guilt. You're not condoning the situation. You're not saying it's okay. It is an act of emotional self-defense that I will not tolerate this situation anymore. And I can't control if someone else is going to take care of the justice, or I'm not able to actually take care of the justice of it, but I will act within the circumstances that I have in order to make changes to protect myself, because it is not worth it for me to burn out. Okay? That was my kind of theoretical stuff. We're gonna get concrete now. That's real conceptual up here. So, concretely, what does this look like? This is the control spectrum. You can ask yourself these 3 questions. What is in your control? What is outside of your sphere that you cannot control? And then what can you influence? That is this space of collaborative control. Okay? I'll give you an example here, and then there's a quiz later on. I'm gonna make you guys actually participate. So I'm gonna give you examples. These are like answers to the quiz, kind of. So you can't control conflict. If you're having problems with some of your colleagues, you cannot stop that, right? What you can control is your own communication in that situation. That is your agency and your actions in the form of communication. That is 100% in your control, which means that you can influence conflict resolution, okay? At the very least, you need to be focusing just on what you can control, and then it will influence things towards what you want. Does it always resolve itself? No, not necessarily, but trust me, you get this mindset down. When I learned this, when I was doing the boundaries coaching and learning these concepts for the first time, I cannot tell you the amount of progress I made in 2 months, black and white. It was literally like 0 to 60 that I was like, who am I? Like, where did I come from because of how much progress I made in such a short period of time? So if you get to a point where you're saying like, nope, I am gonna only focus on what I can control, and I'm gonna act very strongly on behalf of myself in that space that I can control, you can make so many changes, and in how you approach stress, it will feel so different. So other example, if you can't control external deadlines, like there's this event coming up, there's these things that you have to do for the extracurriculars that you help with running, whatever those are. You can control your own personal workflow. You can also influence internal deadlines. So maybe you talk to your supervisor and you say, I have so much going on with this event that's happening. Can we move this around? Because I cannot change this external deadline, and I'm trying to really manage my personal workflow. So can we together collaboratively make a change with some of these internal deadlines? That's a possibility. You also can't control culture. So the example I usually give for this, because I give this presentation not just to teachers, but the example of like an always-on culture. So you never really leave at work, and you're just on all hours of the night responding to things and whatnot. You can't control that if that's just the culture of the organization. You can control your own personal behavior. If you're gonna say, I am off at 5, there's no more emails, no more calls, no more anything, no more texts. You can also influence expectations. So you have the conversation with your supervisor, with your colleagues saying, this is how I operate. You guys can be in this culture that I can't control, but I'm gonna operate like this, and I just want you to know and manage expectations that are placed on you. So those are 3 examples. Now we're gonna talk about these protective skills. So we talked about the mindset. I told you we don't have time to dig deep into these skills. Again, if as we're going through this and you're like, I'm not good at that skill, then that's a really good time to go to Google, find a book on it, and learn more. To develop it. Or if you're like, wow, this was such a great presentation, you can also talk to me if you're like, you need to come and like teach more and like get with my principal. Like you can talk to your principal, talk to me. I'm always happy to share more just to help people's lives be better. So we're gonna have gestures for each one of these because you guys are teachers, you can handle it. And so it's partially so that you guys can remember all 5 of them, so that then when we get to the section where we're practicing them, then you actually remember what the options are. So self-awareness first is just pointing to yourself. So let's point to ourselves, guys. I'm gonna make you do the gesture, okay, just so you can keep that in mind. And the questions are basically asking yourself, what are your warning signs and what perceptions may be affecting you? Because if you don't know your warning signs of that you're starting to feel stressed or that you're feeling chronically stressed, then that's when it feels like it snuck up on you, when really it didn't. It's just that you weren't self-aware. So if you're not good at self-awareness, this is the most basic skill of being able to catch yourself when you're like, oh, there I go again, not really eating full meals, and so I'm depleting my physical energy, which is affecting my mental and emotional capacity and threshold. Just be aware of your warning signs. And perceptions might be things like, for example, if you're a people pleaser. We don't have any of those in Utah. If you're an overachiever or a workaholic, those have actually been shown. There's research that shows that you're more likely to burn out. And it's because of internal pressures, perceptions that we place on ourselves of being expected to show up in a certain way or to achieve at a certain level. And we don't have to go that far. But we think that we do. And so we push ourselves and we overextend ourselves. So being aware of that. So self-awareness, pointing to yourself is the gesture. Self-compassion. The gesture for this is putting your hand over your heart. Like, have a little moment of self-compassion. Guys, I'm going to make you do it so you actually remember it. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for humoring me. So if self-compassion is something that you need to work on, such as people pleasers, overachievers, workaholics, there's a lot of guilt that comes with that kind of mindset. So the person to go to, I'll give you the resource for this so you can dig deep on this, is Kristen Neff. Her last name is Neff, like Jeff, but the letter N. She is like the Brene Brown of self-compassion. Instead of vulnerability, she's the queen of self-compassion. Her website, she has these little self-compassion breaks that if you are in a space where you're like a shame storm, you could say, like Brene Brown talks about, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that conversation with that parent was so bad, or like, oh, I really did a terrible job handling that with the student. Self-compassion is part of what will alleviate that stress that you are causing yourself by not knowing how to handle that emotion. And so you can go to her website and be like, I'm having this moment. And you go through, do one of her little self-compassion breaks, and she will, they're just like magic. It just like makes you feel so much better. And so these are the basics of it. How can you normalize what you're feeling? So there's a huge change when you are able to look at what you're feeling and you're having this, oh crap, and like, I'm so uncomfortable and I feel terrible about this, or I'm struggling right now, I'm super falling behind. And then you make this change by normalizing it and saying, of course you're stressed out right now. Because anyone in your shoes would be stressed out right now. Anyone who just went through what you just went through would be stressed out. Anyone. Everyone's gone through something like this, and what you're experiencing is normal. Like, I don't know why it works as well as it does, but it does something to seriously alleviate and process those feelings so that the swirl inside disappears. So again, that stress can pass and it's not in your system for as long as we have a tendency to hang on to it. And then also, what permissions do you need to give yourself? So this is big because again, the shoulding on ourselves, like I should do this, I should be keeping up, I should be doing better, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done that. Like all of that, you are allowed to be human. You overachievers and you workaholics and you just, teachers are so extra. You guys do so much. And if you can't keep up with it all, it's okay. And you need to give yourself permission. I say give yourself permission for worst case scenario, which might be, I'm allowed to quit my job over this. If I just had a really uncomfortable situation with a parent, and I'm not saying that that's what the answer should be, but there is something about our brain just feeling like I'm so frustrated, so tired of all these crazy parent interactions that I can't control. And if you just say, you know what, I'm allowed to quit my job if I wanted to, there's something really freeing and liberating. Again, empowering to be like, I could do that if I wanted to. And the vast majority of the time, you're not actually going to choose to do the worst case scenario, but by saying you're allowed to be human, you're allowed to screw up, you're allowed to say the wrong thing, you're allowed to step on somebody's toes because you're human. Permission to make mistakes. Hand on the heart. That's our gesture. Let's move on to the next one. Self-advocacy. The gesture for this is raising your hand like, hello, I have needs. So the questions are, what needs are not being met at work, and how can that be changed? And what mental health support might you need? If you do not advocate for yourself, you are very likely to burn out, because it is, again, because it's an intersection, burnout happens at the intersection of the individual and their work environment. People, other people, whether it's your colleagues or your supervisor, influence what's happening in your environment. So you have to say, something's not working on my side here. Let's have some conflict resolution. Basically, remember, we're thinking about it like a relationship. And if you don't advocate for yourself, again, as people in the helping profession, we're great about saying, oh, their needs matter more and my needs don't matter. And that is not true. If you do not advocate for yourself, you will end up draining yourself. So, raise of the hand, self-advocacy. Communication. So self-advocacy is within the umbrella of communication, but communication in general. What does your supervisor need to know to support you? What do your coworkers need to know to support you? So this might be, I'm moving this month. So FYI, please don't put more things on my plate. Please don't expect this or that of me, or if it's, I don't know, my dog just died, or maybe it's, I'm having some struggles in my relationship. So just so that you know that there's some stressors at home, that there's maybe some illness happening with, my kids or my parents, whatever it is, that's just communicating so that people know where you're at, and so that then they can help in supporting you and caring for you and getting your needs met. So the gesture for communication is, we're just going to put the hand by the ear. So if we remember the 4 that we've learned so far, self-awareness is right here, self-compassion right here, self-advocacy, you guys are on this communication. You're like going before I even say it. And then the last one, again, there's 6. The 6th one is self-care. We'll get to that at the end. But these are protective skills for prevention specifically. You can apply to specific situations. So priority management. Where do you need stronger or clearer boundaries? This might be with people, or it might be with yourself. Because it might be, I said I was going to stop grading papers at 9 o'clock, but it's now 9:30 and I haven't stopped. And I know that it's going to keep me up because I'm not giving myself time to wind down. So where do you need stronger or clearer boundaries, and what are must-dos versus nice-to-dos? Again, teachers are so extra. My assistant used to be a teacher, and everything's cuter when Amy is around. She does everything, like everything's cuter and these thoughtful things and more candy, and it's like just so many things that I'm like, I adore you. And also, as long as the nice-to-dos are not coming out of an empty tank, keep doing those things. But sometimes we start to blur the line between this is a nice-to-do, it's not a must-do, and I'm tired right now, so I need to stop. I need to not do the nice-to-do. So awareness around that. The gesture for this is just going to be pointing to our watch, because priority management, a lot of times people call it time management, but it comes down to priorities, but it affects how your time is managed. So we have our 5 skills: self-awareness, self-compassion, self-advocacy, communication, and then priority management. All right, fabulous. So the burnout equation. If you guys ever wanted to know, how do I burn out? Because that's a goal in life. Here's how you do it, okay? Serious mismatches. So again, think about it like a relationship where there's just a lack of alignment here, okay? There's a mismatch between these two parties, the person and their work environment. When there's a serious mismatch and it's chronic in nature, it leads to an erosion of coping abilities. And that's when your body does weird things like making you ultra exhausted and makes your brain start to disengage and makes it so that you start feeling like you suck at your job. Those 3 things that qualify for burnout. So we're now going to look at the risk factors. So this is the upstream of burnout itself. This is the research has shown that there's 6 different areas where when there's mismatches in those areas, that's what causes burnout. And I want to preface this before I go to this next slide, because I always worry that people are going to look at the slide and be like, oh my gosh, everything on that slide describes my job. I must be burnt out and I should quit. I don't want you to think that.
This is the sign for this.
No, no, but like again, my day job in the public health sector, I love my job, but I can also find stuff on these lists that I'm like, there's that problem and that problem in my job. So no one has a perfect job, okay? So even if you're seeing a lot of things, please don't feel overwhelmed by them, okay? So the first area that the research shows is workloads. This is a lot of people's first thought when they think burnout, they think workload. And it can come in different forms. It's not always the same. So these bullets are the different types of workload mismatches that might come up. Too much work, or not enough time, or the hours are too long, or there's too many interruptions, or the emotional burden is very high. So there's a term called emotional labor, which refers to when people have to show up with a customer service attitude, like, I'm okay and ready to take care of you, when I am struggling emotionally, personally, myself. So you guys do that every day whenever you have a bad day, because you guys have to show up with a smile on your face for the kids, right? And that can be exhausting. That was a big factor in my burnout being perpetuated, because I was pretending for the whole rest of the world that my life was fine when it felt like, my marriage was falling apart, and I felt like my whole world was falling apart because of the dysfunction that was there. And so that falseness and having to show up all the time can wear on you after a long time. So it's called emotional labor. The second area that the research shows results in burnout is when there's a mismatch in our sense of control in the workplace. So this can look like micromanaging, or ineffective teams, ineffective management, our schedule, because there's certain organizations that the schedule can be super sporadic and they have zero say in it, and it's just kind of like you just have to do what you're told, or decisions affecting you, where there's basically the higher ups are making the decision and you're not involved, and then you just have to respond and deal with it. Because I'm sure in the education sector, you guys never, ever have to deal with that kind of stuff, right? That trickle down. So, okay, we are going to practice on one of these things. So which of these bullets, what sounds like, here's a good general one that like everyone probably struggles with, and let's practice on.
Workload.
Okay, which one within the workload?
Yeah.
Since I just interrupted you, I thought that was
What was it?
I was going to say that was well timed when you interrupted her.
Yeah, there you go.
too many interruptions.
Too many interruptions. Okay, what can't we control when it comes to there's too many interruptions in the work that I'm trying to get done?
Other people.
Yep, you can't control if the interruption happens. What else can we not control?
Deadlines or circumstances that we're not aware of.
Yeah, when it's like, surprise, I'm interrupting you with a deadline, and
Communication
yeah, if somebody else doesn't communicate, can't control that.
makes it your emergency.
Yeah, that emergency stuff, other people's emergencies. Okay, so with that then, of those things that we can't control, looking at too many interruptions, what can we control when it comes to too many interruptions?
Our response to it.
We can control our response to it.
Location.
Our location, we're going to avoid where people can interrupt us.
Well, door open or closed, working at school or grading papers at home.
Absolutely. Yep. If you know that interruptions are likely, you can do things to mitigate them.
Negotiating the interruption and the necessity for it, or the things around it.
I love that. Negotiating and yeah, the necessity of it, and yeah, the actual interruption itself. Absolutely. So with that then, what's something you can then influence that it might be related to some of those things that then you just suggested?
Your availability.
Office hours.
So those are still things that you can control, but I'll help you with this one, because sometimes, again, this is a mindset shift, so sometimes it's a little bit harder, but like what you said, negotiating, it might be if you have a regular interrupter, you talk to them about it. You actually have the conversation with them, and so you influence the likelihood of them continuing to interrupt you that same way or at that same time. Again, they still decide if they're going to interrupt you again or with that frequency, but you can influence it by entering that collaborative control space, okay? So when it comes to too many interruptions, then of the skills, the 5 skills, okay, you should remember them because I gave you gestures. Of the 5 skills, which do you need in order to deal with this particular issue of too many interruptions? Okay, so I'm seeing the priority management, okay, and then I heard the self-advocacy, like we talked about the negotiating piece. What else?
For me, it would be self-compassion because you feel guilty when you say no.
So good.
Be nice enough to yourself that you can say no.
You are allowed to say no. Do not should on yourself that I should be allowing people to make my life harder when I'm trying to get my work done. Yeah. Communication.
Yeah.
That's the negotiation and advocacy piece. Yeah. And I'd say also the self-awareness, because if you don't realize that too many interruptions are the issue, you might be saying, I have too much work. When maybe it's like, no, actually I have the right amount of work. I just can't freaking get it done because there's too many interruptions. Okay, let's move on to this next one. So there also can be a mismatch in the area of rewards. So this is intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So this might look like recognition, positive feedback, unsatisfying work, compensation, benefits, promotions. Also, there might be a mismatch in the area of community. So maybe poor communication between people, isolation from others, unhealthy competitiveness, selfishness, divisiveness, or antagonism. Okay? So with this, thank you for coming. With this, which of these bullet points do you want to work on? Which one looks like, oh yeah, that's one that we struggle with a lot.
Rewards.
Okay, which bullet underneath of the rewards?
Recognition or unsatisfying work?
Unsatisfied.
Okay, I'm hearing unsatisfying work. All right. So what can you not control?
Job requirements.
Job requirements. What else?
The copier and the copy center.
If the technology is not working. Yeah. What else?
Got sick.
Yeah.
What other people are bringing to the table and what their history was before they came to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So then what can we control when we're doing unsatisfying work? Say it louder, Gig.
Your attitude.
Yeah, okay, that's one thing, is that you can control your attitude. Absolutely, your own inner experience makes a big difference. What else?
I was just going to say, sometimes I have to try to remain neutral. Not necessarily look for the bad, because if you're looking for the bad, you'll find it, but just kind of be neutral. I wonder what I'm going to experience today. I wonder what might happen.
There you go.
Curious.
Again, that's more mindset stuff of, again, controlling your own inner world. What were you going to say?
Sometimes there's parts of my job that I really enjoy, and I'll just make sure I I'm a nerd. I like to make Excel spreadsheets, so I'll try to in a day that's really rough. I'll be like, I'm gonna allow myself to work on this spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of fills the tank.
There you go. That's awesome. And we're going to talk about self-care at the end, which is tank filling, but that's awesome because I was going to say specifically, if you want to change the unsatisfying work, not only control your own inner experience, but if you want to change the unsatisfying work, sometimes it's, again, you need to make sure you pace it in between things that are more fulfilling. And then it also might be, it's connecting it back to the mission so that you can be reminded of, here's why I'm doing this. As much as this piece sucks and is soul-sucking, it's a part of the bigger picture. There's a reason for it. It's not just only busy work. So what were you going to say, Gig?
Perspective. I don't know if that's the signal for that.
There you go.
But, and maybe it's just my bubble of the world, but there are some school classes class of 2013, that just aren't as good as the others. And fellow teachers in the hall, will go, what about your sophomores this year? What, every now and then. And so by perspective, and just a little bit different than just what's your mission and why you're there,
Mm-hmm.
is that, sometimes it's an off year.
Yep.
And you have to be able to give it that, gee, I'm not reaching them. It might just be the audience.
Yep.
And now it's that old proverb that, man calls you, a donkey, ignore him. 2 men call you a donkey, get a saddle.
Mm.
So, one-offs, okay. If it starts to be a trend, then there's something bigger there.
Yeah. Well, and so with that then, of those 5 skills that we talked about, which ones do we need to deal with unsatisfying work? Self-awareness, you need to know what is satisfying to you. Self-compassion, that of like, it's not me. If I just feel like what I'm saying and sharing is falling on deaf ears, it's not me. What else?
I think the time a little bit, like you said, sandwich it, maybe or spread it out between different things. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What were you going to say?
I was going to raise the hand for expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. Okay. You guys are awesome. Okay, we're going to finish off these 6 areas. So the next area is a fairness mismatch. So this can look like disrespect, discrimination, favoritism, bias, or rigged systems. Or a values mismatch, which can look like hypocrisy, dishonesty, destructiveness, which this might be if you work at an organization that's very wasteful and like it's damaging to the environment, and that is you struggle with that. That can cause chronic stress. If your personal values are challenged at the organization or by the way that the organization operates, or if you have a sense of meaninglessness in your job, where it feels like the job itself has no value. So we're not going to dig into this super deep because we don't have time, but and these can also feel a little bit hairier because we just would need more time to really be thinking about how can you deal with these types of things, because they can feel a little bit more systemic and a little bit less like we have power. But trust me, you always have power in the situation. Again, even if the power is I am leaving this situation because it is such a problem. I'll give you an example just so that you know that you really do always have power in these situations. So in the area of like fairness and disrespect happening in an organization, my sister used to work at an organization where there was a supervisor that would come in and harass her boss. And it was something that happened in front of the whole team. So it caused stress for the whole team. It created a very not good culture. And her boss, for whatever reason, did not communicate it and do anything to stop it. She just kind of took it. So my sister had self-awareness where she said, I'm not okay with this. What she can't control is that other supervisor and what she does. What she can control is communicating and advocating and saying, I can control if this gets reported. So she reported it to the department head, and she ended up influencing the fact that then that supervisor was no longer allowed to come on that floor. And so we're not always going to have the ideal outcome, but we can at least, again, maintain our power by acting powerfully in the sphere that we control. So whatever it is that you can control, you make your situation as good as possible within that area. So protective skills, the last one, which is just one that we should be doing generally, and it doesn't get applied to specific situations. This should just be an always thing. Self-care, I want you guys to think of yourselves as a battery. This is the best way that I've learned how to really understand self-care and the importance of it. You are a battery. You are powering things all day long. You are powering your own life. You're powering projects. You're putting energy into your kids and into all of these things that you are working on. And if you do not take time, if you just say, okay, I've been powering things all day, I'm going to unplug with some Netflix, right? Then there's no drain on the power anymore, right? But you're also not getting recharged. So you need to plug in to something. Real self-care is connection. because that is what fuels you and charges you back up. Because burnout is depletion. It is when you are totally depleted and you keep trying to give out of this bucket that doesn't have anything else to give, and then things start to dysfunction. So, connection with yourself. This is like you have to go home and do homework and figure out you when it comes to self-care. There is no one size fits all. So, connection with yourself. So that might be with your body. You know, again, for some people, that might be yoga, meditation, bubble baths, massages. That might be. But a lot of times, for a lot of people, that's just unplugging. That's not actually plugging into something. It doesn't actually fully recharge them. It's just the, I'm not being drained anymore. So you need to figure out what actually recharges you. And then your mind, I like to use journaling. That's really helpful for me. Creativity, you know, art and hobbies oftentimes can help people with that. Connection with others. You want to make sure that it's with wholesome others. Asking yourself, does this person nourish me? I'm an extrovert. I love people and hanging out with people, and I love the energy of groups. And I have realized as an adult that groups do not nourish me. They're fun, but if I've had a long week and whatnot, I am not going to get recharged if I just do a bunch of group activities. I need one-on-one time with really good humans that feels like they're pouring into me. So really be checking, even though I love my sister, maybe she doesn't necessarily make me feel nourished afterwards, so maybe she's not the one I should be calling when I'm super stressed. And then connection with something bigger than yourself. This might be something, you know, creativity. It could be a cause that you feel strongly about. It could be nature. It could be your spirituality. You choose, but again, it's plugging in, it's connecting with something else that can actually give you some power back. So with that, I am a data person. I love feedback. So if you guys are willing to give me some feedback, I do have a self-coaching toolkit for where you can guide yourself, do like self-coaching on how to create a burnout prevention plan for yourself. That if you fill out that survey as a thank you for giving me feedback, I want to know what I'm doing well, so I do more of it. If there's something I'm not doing well, I want to hear about it so that when I do more trainings like this, then I know what to adjust. So I appreciate you very much for taking a couple minutes to do that.